We are coming to you with developments that are forcing a complete reassessment of everything this conflict has been until this moment. Not a reassessment of the military balance, not a reassessment of the escalation trajectory, a reassessment of something more fundamental, something that cuts to the bone of how this war has been fought and what Iran has understood about the systems standing between its missiles and Israeli cities. Iran is striking Israel right now, Tel Aviv, multiple other cities simultaneously, missiles in the air, impacts on the ground, footage arriving faster than it can be processed. And there is not a single interceptor rising to meet them, not one. Watch the footage that is circulating right now and compare it deliberately, carefully, to every previous wave of this conflict. In the earlier waves, even the worst of them, even the nights when the Iron Dome and the Patriot were being overwhelmed and missiles were getting through in numbers that shocked every defense analyst watching, there was still activity above the city, interceptors climbing, the white exhaust trails of Tamir missiles rising from their launchers toward incoming threats. Patriot PAC-3s leaving their canisters in salvos aimed at the upper atmosphere. The defense was failing. We reported that failure honestly across every previous wave. But it was failing while trying. The systems were firing. The engagement was happening. Missiles were being launched upward, even when those missiles were not finding their targets. That activity is not visible in the footage arriving right now. The sky above Tel Aviv is not a sky in which a defense system is fighting and losing. It is a sky in which a defense system is not fighting at all. The incoming missiles are crossing that sky without opposition, without the radar-guided interceptors that should be meeting them, without the engagement geometry that has defined every previous wave of this conflict. They are arriving at their targets in a silence from the ground that is more alarming than any amount of defensive fire that failed to stop them would be. Because defensive fire that fails is a system under stress. No defensive fire at all is something else entirely. Something has happened to the Israeli air defense architecture that goes beyond attrition, beyond interceptor depletion, beyond the mathematical exhaustion of a system that has been firing continuously for weeks. Something has happened to the system at a level that is producing not degraded performance, but no performance. And the event that occurred in the days before tonight's strikes, an event that Israeli authorities announced quietly, in language designed to minimize its significance, in a press release that did not receive the attention it deserved, is now impossible to disconnect from what the footage is showing. An Israeli official employed within the Iron Dome program was arrested. The charge? Passing classified information to Iran. Let us be very precise about what that sentence means in the context of what you are watching right now. The Iron Dome is not a simple system. It is not a launcher and a missile and a radar working in isolation. It is a network, an integrated architecture of sensors, fire control computers, communication links, engagement software, and operational protocols that function together as a system, precisely because every component knows what every other component is doing at every moment. The radar knows what the fire control computer is calculating. The fire control computer knows what the launcher is prepared to fire. The launcher knows what the radar is tracking. The communication links between those components carry data that, in aggregate, describe not just the current state of the system, but its logic, the rules by which it decides when to engage, which threats to prioritize, how to allocate its interceptor inventory, and what signatures it uses to distinguish an incoming missile from background noise. An individual with access to that system, with legitimate, credentialed operational access of the kind that a program employee possesses, has access to all of that. Not as abstract technical documentation, as live operational knowledge. The knowledge of how the system actually behaves in an engagement, where its coverage has gaps, what incoming threat parameters cause it to hesitate in its engagement calculation, what electronic signatures, what approach geometries, what combinations of speed and altitude and vector cause its threat classification algorithms to produce outcomes other than immediate engagement. That knowledge, passed to an adversary that has been designing missiles and planning strikes against exactly that system for the duration of this conflict, is not simply intelligence. It is a key to the specific locks that the Iron Dome's engagement logic represents. And an adversary with that key does not need to overwhelm the system with volume or defeat it with speed. It can approach the system in precisely the way that the system was not designed to handle, and watch the system fail to respond. The footage arriving right now is what a system looks like when someone has used that key. This is the scenario that counterintelligence professionals, that operational security planners, that the architects of integrated air defense systems spend their careers trying to prevent. Not the scenario of a system destroyed, the scenario of a system neutralized, made irrelevant, turned from a defensive barrier into an expensive collection of hardware that tracks incoming missiles and does nothing about them, because the logic that should trigger its response has been compromised at a level too deep to patch in the time available. Iran did not defeat the Iron Dome tonight by building a faster missile. It defeated the Iron Dome by understanding it, by having inside its planning process knowledge of the system's operational logic that no adversary should possess. And the arrested employee, the person who sat inside the program, who had access to operational data and engagement parameters and system architecture, is the pathway through which that knowledge traveled from Israeli defense infrastructure to Iranian military planning. The arrest was announced. The significance of the arrest was not fully communicated, and now the full significance is visible in the footage arriving from Tel Aviv and every other Israeli city currently absorbing Iranian missiles without a single interceptor rising in response. Let us address the Patriot dimension of this failure separately, because the Patriot and the Iron Dome are distinct systems with distinct failure modes, and the simultaneous silence of both in tonight's footage requires explanation that goes beyond a single arrested employee. The Patriot PAC-3 is an American system. Its operational logic, its engagement software, its communication protocols are different from the Iron Dome's in every technical detail. An employee of the Iron Dome program does not have direct access to Patriot source code or Patriot engagement parameters. The two systems are integrated at the level of operational coordination. They share a common air picture. They deconflict their engagement zones. But their internal logic is separate. Yet the Patriot is also silent tonight. That simultaneous silence, Iron Dome silent, Patriot silent, both systems operational in hardware terms and non-functional in engagement terms, points to something at the integration layer, the shared air picture, the common operational network through which the two systems coordinate their responses. If the compromised knowledge that traveled from the arrested employee to Iranian military planners included information about how Iron Dome and Patriot coordinate, about the communication architecture, the threat data formats, the integration protocols that allow the two systems to operate as a unified defense, then Iran may possess the ability to affect that integration layer in a way that disrupts both systems simultaneously without destroying either one. An adversary that can send a signal, or a data pattern, or a spoofed threat picture through the integration network that both systems depend on does not need to shoot down a Patriot battery to silence it. It needs to give the Patriot's fire control computer a problem it cannot resolve in the engagement window available. A spoofed track, a false threat classification, a data conflict between what the Patriot's own radar is seeing and what the integrated air picture is telling it to see. Any of those conditions can produce exactly what the footage is showing, a system that is receiving data, processing data, and producing no engagement solution because the data it is receiving has been manipulated to prevent that solution from being generated. This is not theoretical. This is the frontier of electronic warfare against integrated air defense systems. It is the domain that the most sophisticated military planners, Russian, Chinese, and now evidently Iranian, have been developing capability in for years. The ability to attack not the hardware of an enemy's defense system, but its data, its logic, its decision-making process. If the arrested employee provided Iran with the architectural knowledge of how Iron Dome and Patriot communicate and coordinate, then what Iran may have delivered tonight is not a salvo of missiles against a functioning defense system. It is a salvo of missiles against a defense system that has been electronically blinded, fed a data environment designed to prevent it from generating the engagement solutions its hardware is fully capable of executing. The missiles arriving over Tel Aviv are not getting through because they are faster than the interceptors, though they may be. They may be getting through because the interceptors are not launching. And the interceptors are not launching because the system that should be telling them to launch has been given information that is preventing it from doing so. That is the most alarming interpretation of what the footage is showing. And it is an interpretation that the silence of both systems, simultaneously, completely, in a way that has no precedent in this conflict, makes impossible to dismiss. For the Israeli security establishment, the arrested employee represents a category of failure that is distinct from every military failure this conflict has produced. Military failures can be addressed with hardware, with tactics, with operational adjustments. A penetration of the Iron Dome program by Iranian intelligence, a source inside the system, with access to operational logic, who passed that access to the adversary, is a failure of the counterintelligence architecture that protects the most sensitive defense programs in the country. Identifying one employee does not close the penetration. It identifies one pathway. The question of what else was taken, by whom, through which other access points, across what timeline, is a question that Israeli intelligence is working through right now in conditions of maximum urgency. Because the answer to that question determines not just what Iran knows about the Iron Dome. It determines what Iran knows about every other system in the Israeli defense inventory that employee had any contact with, any knowledge of, any access to. The missiles arriving over Tel Aviv right now are the operational consequence of an intelligence failure. The defense systems that should be engaging those missiles are silent because someone who worked inside those systems decided to give their operational secrets to the adversary those systems were built to defeat. And Israel, and the United States and every ally watching this footage and calculating what it means for their own integrated air defense architectures, is now living with the consequences of that decision in real time. The skies above Tel Aviv are clear of interceptors tonight, clear in a way they have not been at any previous point in this conflict. And that clarity, that absence where there should be response, that silence where there should be engagement, is the most unsettling image this war has produced. Because it is not the silence of a system that has run out of missiles. It is the silence of a system that has been made not to fire. We are monitoring all incoming footage, all Israeli official communications, and all technical analysis of tonight's engagement picture as it develops. The missiles are still arriving. The sky is still silent. Stay with us.